There's a good chance you've seen something like this in your rear vision mirror before, but that would have been a Ford Ranger Wildtrak. This is the new Ford Everest Wildtrak, a V6 4x4 7-seat take on the theme, and it does apply some of those styling cues that are familiar from the Ranger Wildtrak, including some interior changes as well. Now there's a fair bit to cover here, but this won't be as detailed as my full detailed Everest review, which you'll find a link to in the description below, but I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about whether you should choose the Everest Wildtrak, including what it's like to drive on-road and what it's like to drive off-road. So let's get to it, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Let's go. It's pretty easy to tell the Everest Wildtrak from the other versions of the Everest lineup, not only because of this luxe yellow paintwork, which is only available on this grade, but because it does have some features that set it apart from the other models in the lineup. So you get this different two-tone finish around the wheel arches. You also get specific side steps for this model, specific badging, a different grille, and a few other features on the inside, including Wildtrak embroidery on the seats. You get the orange stitching across the dashboard and a different interior look and feel as well. Now, I'm not going to do a full detailed rundown of the interior, but it does look and feel a bit more special than the models below it, but it still has some of the features that you get in the models below it, including that 12-inch tablet-style touchscreen media system with Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and sat-nav. There's also climate control, air conditioning. You've got rear ventilation for the second and third row seats. Yep, 7 seats as standard, and you get digital instrumentation as well. A nice leather-lined steering wheel, sportier seats as well, which feel quite nice, and the trim on the seats is good as well. So it does feel pretty special on the inside. It looks pretty good on the outside, and if you're wondering, you can get 20-inch wheels instead if that's what you want, or you can opt for the 18-inch wheel package with all-terrain tires. So that's what most people are probably going to do, but the 20-inch wheel does look pretty good as well. Also, you get LED lighting around the car, plus you get zone lighting, which is Ford's description of a lighting system that comes on around the entire car, so you can see around this car really well at nighttime, and not only because of those headlights. So there's a bunch of really great features here, and it seems to stack up from a value for money perspective, but honestly, I'd love to know what you think. Is it worth spending almost $2,000 more over the V6 Sport version of the Everest? And what else could you consider if you're looking at this vehicle? Okay, so there are a few different options for you to choose from when it comes to alternatives. The first one would be the Isuzu MU-X. It certainly doesn't have a V6 engine. It certainly doesn't have a model that stands out quite as much as the Wildtrak, but it seems like a pretty good option if you are into towing and off-roading and you just want a really practical and even more affordable take on this type of vehicle. Now, there are a bunch of other affordable 7-seat diesel 4x4 models, but honestly, I reckon the biggest competitor to the Ford Everest Wildtrak is one of the other Ford Everests, because there are so many different variants available and plenty of value in the other grades as well. So if you're not necessarily sold on this look, you could just choose one of the cheaper versions. And obviously there's also a new Prado coming very soon. The new generation Toyota Prado will be, I think, something of a moment for the brand, because it's taking a bit of a different tact to the existing models, and it is going to be, well, in huge demand. So if you haven't ordered one already, maybe go and do that. But I reckon that it could be one of the most important cars coming in 2024. There's only one choice when it comes to the Everest Wildtrak. It's a V6 engine, a 3-litre turbo diesel with 184 kilowatts and 600 Newton meters. It comes as standard with a 10-speed automatic transmission and full-time 4-wheel drive. So it has the choice of 2-wheel drive or high-range 4-wheel drive, or an automatic version of 4-wheel drive, which will basically choose what happens for you. And then, of course, you've got low range as well. I'm going to show you what it's like off-road in a sec. I'll just point out that you still have to pay $1,700 if you want the optional tow pack, even on the Everest Wildtrak, but that includes a tow bar, wiring harness, electronic brake controller, and also it has a system that will adjust the blind spot monitoring system if you are towing something behind you. And I'll tell you, this car does tow very easily. It is an excellent tow vehicle. So if that's what you're after, I mean, there's plenty of Everests to choose from, but maybe this one would be the right one for you. So nothing's changed when it comes to the shifter in this car. It's still the E shifter, which I find a bit daft, especially when you're trying to go between reverse and drive. Can just be a little bit annoying. Maybe that's being nitpicky. If you live with it for a while, I'm sure you'd get used to it, but I don't like it. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. I reckon shifters should be simpler than they currently are. Anyway, all right, let's go for a drive on road and see what this Everest Wildtrak is like. And I've already driven it for a while, and I can tell you it's just like any other Everest to drive, although I do think that when you option the 18-inch wheel pack with those all-terrain tires, it does squish things up a little bit, makes things a little bit softer, maybe not as grippy in on-road situations either, so the back end can slide out if you have it in too high, but there's an easy way to fix that. You can run it in 4A and it will run four-wheel drive automatic. When it thinks it needs to go into four-wheel drive, it will, so it will limit those slip moments for you. But I think that these tires on road are okay. They certainly hang on well enough unless you're really pushing it or hooking in. And look, this car doesn't necessarily egg you on to do that, but it is a fun and nice SUV to drive and live with on day-to-day basis. So it does have nice steering. It's also got a pretty nice ride to it as well. Although the rear suspension can be just a little bit sharp at times over sharp bumps, but all in all, it's a pretty livable drive experience from the dynamics perspective. Now, it does have a fair bit of dynamism when it comes to this V6 engine. It is a corker. There's plenty of grunt here. You've got a 10-speed auto, which is very clever as well. But the 10-speed automatic, I think, is mostly pretty good, although it does have a tendency at times, depending on if you're maybe going up a gradient or down a gradient even, to jump between gears quite a lot. So if that's not something you enjoy, then you might not enjoy the way this vehicle behaves in terms of the transmission. But honestly, I think it's smart enough, and I think it does a really good job in driving. But the other thing that I really appreciate about the Everest is that it is quite refined. Like, you can feel the lumps and bumps in the road surface, but you can't hear much of the road surface. And in fact, it's pretty quiet at most speeds, especially when you are just cruising along the freeway, for instance. And around town, it's also pretty hushed as well. So, I mean, it's a pretty nice car to live with on a day-to-day basis. You have to understand that it is still a serious 4x4, so it does have some traits that you might not find in like a Toyota Kluger or something like that, because it's got off-road underpinning. So it's designed to do things that a Kluger certainly can't. All right, let's go see what it can do. So I've selected four-wheel drive high range and the mud and ruts drive mode, because that basically means that you've got your traction control system switched off. You've also got a rear diff lock applied. So that means you can get through things that are a little bit more gnarly with, well, ease at least. So let's go find that. So just going over a few different little obstacles here, driving through some ruts. There's a bit of a large sort of section in the middle here. We might scrape just a little bit. Yep, can feel it bellying out just a little bit, but I mean, a lift kit will fix that. Even maybe a different set of tires might help fix that too. Give you a bit more clearance. Now let's keep going through this mud patch. And the thing that really stands out about this Everest is the fact that you've got this technology on board, but it's still a very natural and real feeling drive experience. All right, so I've just come up to something a little bit more nasty looking. So I'm going to put it into four-wheel drive low range, put the car into neutral, and then shift to low range by pressing this button down here. We're in low range. The ESC is off, and we should be good to go. So let's see. Oh yeah, that's a bit nasty. All right. Well, we got through that pretty easily. Okay, so we're still in low range, and I'm just going to keep it in low range because some of these points coming up do get a little bit treacherous, and they've been washed out even more since last time I came through these tracks. So I'm just going to take the easy way out because no one wants to get stuck when it's 40 degrees outside. So we'll keep moving, and there's a fair bit of water out there, which there wasn't last time I came through this patch. So I'm just going to take this track on the edge of that deep puddle, go up over these rocks, and just slowly peter the way through. This car is so capable at handling changes of gradient and terrain. It's just really easy to drive off-road and feel confident while you are. Get a little bit of angle here, Actually, you can actually see how much angle you've got if you want to using that screen. And oh my God, the clearance here. These tires have a nice amount of sidewall to them, so you don't feel like you're bashing down very hard on anything. And there's good grip too. This is eating it up. The V6 engine also makes things feel a lot less labored than the 4-cylinder. I drove the 4-cylinder recently off-road as well, and while it is still fine, you've still got 500 Newton meters of torque and a 10-speed auto. It just feels more effortless in this V6 by some margin, I would say. So you don't have a front locking diff, but I haven't really needed it to this point. Hopefully I don't need it, but you know, there is the aftermarket if you want to change things up and adapt your Everest Wildtrak to be even more off-road capable, but just be mindful of your warranty conditions. Now, speaking of warranty, there's a 5-year unlimited kilometer warranty for the Ranger and all Fords. Plus, there's a cap price servicing plan, and the first 4 services, or 60,000 Ks of servicing, will cost you $329 per visit if you go to the Ford dealership. So that's good to see. All right. Let's also think about fuel consumption. On your screen now, I'll show you the official combined cycle fuel consumption figure for the Everest V6. And now I'll show you what I've achieved, including on-road and off-road driving so far. So look, that's probably a good indication of what you might see if you do this sort of off-road driving too. And on-road, obviously, as well. Just crawling up over a few different rocks here. This car is, wow, this is eating this up nicely. And I am so impressed that this can do this straight out of the showroom. And yet, of course, those side steps do bite down every now and then, so you might want to be mindful of that. But as it is, this is very impressive. Just trying to negotiate these little changes in surface here, because we're about to pull up to a spot where I might show you a really nice view and give you my final thoughts on the Ford Everest Wildtrak V6. What a sight to behold, the 4x4 Ford Everest Wildtrak in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales. This thing is an absolute weapon, and it seems like really good value for money. The V6 diesel is fantastic. There's 7 seats with practicality on its side, and it really is great to drive on-road and a menace to drive off-road. Tell me what you think about it in the comments section below. If you own an Everest, let me know if you've had any issues with it. I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already, please do like and subscribe, and let me know if you want any more 4x4 content and which cars. Thanks, I'll see you later.